Today I would like to talk about my portfolio that I made for assessment techniques. The first thing that we did is we picked standards to put in the portfolio, and the one that I picked was the 6th grade math standard of solving real-world and mathematical problems by writing and solving equations of the form x plus p equals q and px equals q for cases in which p, q, and x are all non-negative rational numbers. And for those of you who are not understanding what it's saying, it just means to solve basic math equations. I also wanted to include 2 literacy standards. The first one was to pose and respond to specific questions with elaboration and detail by making comments that would contribute to the topic. And I wanted the students to use precise language and domain-specific vocabulary to either inform or explain about the topic. And I feel that these 2 literacy standards will help students form their questions in a way that will help them understand, because sometimes we have questions and we don't know how to ask them. So I feel like if we work on these 2 standards, that will help them become more articulate. The next thing that we made was a rubric, and I did from 0 to 4, and 0 shows that the students didn't do anything. They didn't even attempt the problem. And then for 1, they attempted it, but they didn't really understand it. And then 2, they attempted it and they understood a little. For 3, they did understand how to write and solve equations, and they could also apply these equations to mathematical problems, but not the real world. And for 4, they could write, solve the equations, and they could apply it to the mathematical problems and the real world problems. We also have a checklist, and the checklist says that the student will understand how to write equations of the forms x plus p equals q and px equals q. They'll be able to solve the equations. They'll be able to apply the equations to mathematical problems. They'll be able to apply them to the real world problems. They will apply domain-specific vocabulary if asked to explain. They will pose specific questions about the topic during discussion or even during class. They will respond to specific questions with elaboration and detail. They will use comments that relate to the topic, and they will be able to explain the process of solving the equations while using domain-specific vocabulary. Next, we have a learning styles assessment. And the one that I chose for my students is on this website, and it consists of 20 questions. If you give it a minute to load. Okay, here it goes. Okay, it says, what's your learning style? And there's 20 questions, but this one gives you 1 question at a time. What kind of book would you like to read for fun? So if you said a book with a lot of words. And then when you're not sure how to spell a word, what are you most likely to do? I write it down. You're out shopping for clothes and you're waiting in line to pay. What are you most likely to do while you're waiting? I usually fidget. When you see the word cat, what do you do first? Do you picture it? Do you say the word or think about being with a cat? I just picture it. What's the best way for you to study? This is the best way. Have someone ask questions and let me answer out loud. What is the best way for you to learn about something? So if someone will show it to me. If you went to a school dance, what would you most likely remember the next day? I would remember the faces that were there. What do you find most distracting when you're trying to study? An uncomfortable chair for me. When you're angry, what are you most likely to do? I usually just put on my mad face. Okay, when you're happy, I'm most likely to talk up a storm, because I love to talk. When in a new place, how do you find your way around? I usually ask somebody for directions. Of these three classes, which is your favorite? I guess art. When you hear a song, what are you most likely to do? I usually sing or hum. What do you find most distracting? If it's too hot or cold. What do you like to do to relax? I like to read. What is the best way for you to remember a friend's phone number? I usually just repeat it over and over again. If you won a game, which of these prizes would you choose? Maybe a game. I like games. Which would you rather go to with a group of friends? Probably a movie. What are you most likely to remember about new people? Their face. When you give someone directions to your house, what are you most likely to tell them? Follow me. I cannot give directions. Okay? And then when you get finished, this page will pop up and it will show you I'm 30% auditory, I'm 45% visual, and I'm 25% tactile. And then it will explain, since I'm a visual learner, it will explain that. Okay, so this is the one that I want to use for my students. Alright. The next thing that we did was a self-evaluation checklist for when they're working in groups, and I want them to say that they brought their supplies, they participated, they were respectful, they did not interrupt, they contributed to the final product, they finished their portion of the work, and they did their best. I think that that's important. And for the peer evaluation, I will give one of these per group member. So if there's 4 group members in the group, each person will receive 3, and they will do one on each person. And it's basically the same as the self. And then we have a diagnostic tool. And for my diagnostic tool, I want to use a pretest, and I want them to solve these 2 equations, because one's in the form of px plus q. P plus x equals q, and one is px equals q. And then also there's sort of like a substitution problem, and then there's also a word problem. And I feel that this diagnostic assessment will let me understand how well they're prepared to start the topics that we're about to start. Okay, and then the assessment in which students use technology, I wanted to use Khan Academy, and for Khan Academy, it's a free website that students or teachers can learn to use. The teachers can go there and they can create a class, and then when all the students have joined the class, the teacher can assign work, and then the teacher can monitor how well they do on each problem, and it also tells the students immediately if they got the problem right or not, so this provides immediate feedback. And then the student will also know what they made on the assessment and can see which questions were missed. That way they can prepare for next time. Now here's the link. Here's the link, and it says if you're a teacher, you can start here, or if you're a parent, you can start here. So if you're a student, you just click the green one, and then you have to sign in with Facebook or Gmail or with any email. And then that will help. I think I set up a dummy account, so this is what it actually looks like. You can see your skill progress. You can see student see, I have to add students. I don't have any. Let's see here. What else is there? And then you can manage your students, you can see the student progress, and then you can see the real time, and then this is just your home page. So that's what I would like to use. And then we have the formative assessment, and for this I used a short, just short answer paper, and I would like the students to fill it out because I've mixed in the px equals q and the p plus x equals q questions together, and I gave them 4 of each, and if they can do this, then I know that they know how. And then for the modified, I cut it down to 4 so that the students who required more time would have more time because they only had 4. And then I also gave them multiple choice so that it could focus their answers. And then the next one is the summative assessment. And my summative assessment is sort of long. It looks long. It's only 18 questions. I started out with some multiple choice questions. And I mixed in, I think there's 2 p plus x equals q and 2 px equals q. And then I did some more of the short answer. And these short answers also help me know if they know how to work with fractions, and it lets me know if they know the multiplication factors. Because if they don't know that 6 times 9 is 54, then they won't be able to do this. Alright, and then I went to a word problem. And for the word problem, I gave them the prompt, and then I gave them questions about these few sentences. And then I gave them one more, and one of them is a multiplication one, and one of them is a addition one. So, then when I modified it, in order to make the assessment fair, I had to give them everything that I gave the other students, but I cut it down. So this time, let me see here. Okay. This time, let me see. There's only 2 multiple choice instead of 4. There's only 6 short answer instead of 12, I think. And then there's there's the 2 problems, the 2 word problems. And I did that to make it fair. I cut it down so that people who needed more time could have it, and that's what I modified that test for. Alright. And then the correlation to Danielson. The standards relate to domain 1 because you must set instructional outcomes, and in the conceptual frameworks it falls under knowledge because you need to know the knowledge of the standards, you need to know what the standards are, and you need to know all that good stuff so that you can teach it. And then a diagnostic tool also relates to domain 1 because it helps design coherent instruction. You need to know where your students are starting so that you can move forward from there. And it also falls under knowledge because, like I said, you need to know where your students are starting. And then it can also fall under pedagogy because the teachers need the knowledge of the standards and they need the knowledge of how to teach them. And the assessments, whether they're formative or summative, relate to domain 3, which says use assessment and instruction. It also relates to modifying and to the modified assessments under demonstrating flexibility and responsiveness in domain 4 because it helps maintain records. And then in the conceptual frameworks, it either falls under knowledge or professionalism. And it falls under professionalism because you need to have those records. And then checklists and rubrics fall under domains 3 and 4 as well. The peer and self checklist or rubrics can fall under domain 3, which is communicating with students or structure and pacing. And it can also fall under 4, where it's maintaining records. It's so important to maintain records. You need to keep the records. That way, if anybody ever has any questions, you can show them, this is what I've done. This is what the students have done, so those are very important. And then it can also fall under pedagogy and professionalism because it's used in the science of teaching, and like I said, keeping records is very professional. And then that is the end of my portfolio. Thank you for listening.